The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Manhattan penthouse as Sarah Mitchell stood motionless, her reflection barely visible in the storm-darkened glass. Her fingers trembled around the divorce papers, the ink still fresh, the smell of finality hanging in the air like expensive perfume gone sour. 5 years, she whispered to herself. 5 years reduced to a signature. The apartment felt cavernous now, every corner echoing with memories she desperately wanted to forget but couldn't quite release. The cream-colored sofa where they'd planned their future. The kitchen island where he'd proposed with burnt pancakes and a ring hidden in the maple syrup. The bedroom where they'd whispered promises they couldn't keep. Her phone buzzed. Another message from him. Ethan. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't mean anything now. She deleted it without responding, just like the 17 before it. The before, 2 months earlier. You're working late again? Sarah's voice carried across the marble foyer as Ethan dumped his briefcase by the door, his tie already loosened, exhaustion carved into the lines around his eyes. Big case. The Peterson merger, you know how it is. He didn't meet her gaze as he headed straight for the bar cart, pouring himself 3 fingers of whiskey. Actually, I don't know how it is anymore, Sarah said, her voice softer than she intended. You haven't told me about work in months. Ethan paused, the glass halfway to his lips. For a moment, she saw something flicker across his face. Guilt, maybe, or regret. But then it was gone, replaced by that professional mask he wore so well. Sarah, I'm tired. Can we not do this tonight? Do what? Have a conversation? Remember when we used to talk for hours? We were in college. People change. People change, or you changed. The words came out sharper than she meant them to. But she was tired of swallowing her hurt. Ethan finally looked at her, really looked at her, and Sarah saw a stranger staring back. When had that happened? When had the man who used to wake her up with coffee and sonnets turned into this hollow version who could barely remember her birthday? I don't want to fight, he said, and disappeared into his study, closing the door with a soft click that felt louder than a slam. Sarah stood alone in their beautiful, empty apartment, surrounded by designer furniture and abstract art that cost more than her parents' house, and realized she'd never felt more poor in her life. The next morning, Sarah met her best friend Melissa at their favorite cafe in Greenwich Village, the same place they'd been meeting every Thursday for the past decade, through college finals, first jobs, heartbreaks, and weddings. You look like hell, Melissa said by way of greeting, pushing a vanilla latte across the small table. Good morning to you too. Sarah managed a weak smile, wrapping her hands around the warm cup. Melissa's expression softened. That bad. He came home at midnight, barely said 10 words to me, locked himself in his study. Sarah's voice cracked. Mel, I don't think he loves me anymore. Oh, honey. Melissa reached across the table, squeezing Sarah's hand. Have you talked to him? Actually talk, not just those surface-level exchanges you two have been having? I've tried. He shuts down at every time. It's like talking to a wall, except walls sometimes have interesting architecture. Melissa laughed despite the situation. Your sense of humor is still intact. That's a good sign. Is it? Because I feel like I'm drowning, Mel. We were supposed to be the couple that made it. We survived long distance in college, his residency, my master's program, moving to New York, all of it. And now we have everything we said we wanted. And it's not enough. Maybe you have everything you wanted, Melissa said carefully. What about what you wanted? The question hit Sarah like cold water. What did she want? Once upon a time, she'd wanted to be a photographer, to travel, to capture the world through her lens. Now she planned corporate events for wealthy clients who wouldn't remember her name by the time the champagne ran out. I didn't even know anymore, Sarah admitted. Then maybe it's time to find out. That evening, Sarah decided to surprise Ethan. She cooked his favorite meal, chicken piccata with angel hair pasta, the recipe his Italian grandmother had taught her before she passed. She set the table with candles, put on the blue dress he'd once said made her eyes look like the ocean, and waited. 7 o'clock came and went. Then 8. Then 9. At 9:30, Sarah's phone rang. I'm sorry, Ethan said before she could speak. The partners needed me to review the contracts. I'll be home by 11. I made dinner. A pause. I grabbed something at the office. Sarah looked at the cold pasta, the melted candles, her reflection in the darkened window, a woman dressed up with nowhere to go. Of course you did, she said softly and hung up. She didn't wait up for him. The breaking point. The argument happened on a Tuesday. Sarah had spent the morning photographing the city, something she hadn't done in months. She'd walked through Central Park as autumn painted the trees in gold and crimson, her camera feeling both foreign and familiar in her hands. For a few hours, she'd felt like herself again, not Ethan's wife, Not a corporate event planner, but Sarah. Just Sarah. She came home energized, alive, ready to share her rediscovered passion with her husband. She found him in the kitchen, laptop open, phone pressed to his ear. I don't care what the client wants, tell them. He noticed her and held up a finger. 1 minute. 1 minute turned into 10, then 20. Sarah sat her camera bag down with more force than necessary. Ethan glanced up, irritated. Can you give me a minute? I'm working. You're always working, Sarah said. You work at the office. You work at home. You work on weekends. You work on our anniversary. Oh, wait. You missed our anniversary. Ethan's jaw tightened. I apologize for that. You sent flowers and a card. That's what you send to someone you vaguely know from the office, not your wife. What do you want from me, Sarah? He stood up, his voice rising. I'm building my career, trying to make partner. You already made partner 6 months ago, and nothing changed. Because making partner means proving I deserve it. The work doesn't stop. But we did. Sarah's voice broke. We stopped, Ethan. We stopped talking, stopped laughing, stopped being us. When was the last time you asked me about my day? When was the last time we made love instead of just having mechanical sex on Sunday mornings? When was the last time you looked at me like I was someone you actually wanted to be with? The silence that followed was deafening. I look at you, Ethan said quietly. No, you look through me. Like I'm furniture. Like I'm just part of the apartment, part of the life you're supposed to have. Successful lawyer, check. Manhattan penthouse, check. Beautiful wife, check. That's not fair. No. What's not fair is that I've been trying to save this marriage alone for the past year while you've been married to your job. Ethan's phone buzzed. He looked at it. Don't you dare, Sarah warned. It's the senior partner. I'm your wife. And this is my career. He grabbed the phone. This is important. And I'm not. The question hung between them like shattered glass. Ethan stared at her, phone in hand, and Sarah watched him make his choice in real time. He answered the call. Sarah felt something inside her break clean in half. She picked up her camera bag and walked to the bedroom. Where are you going? Ethan called after her, hand over the phone. To remember who I was before I became who you needed me to be. Sarah showed up at Melissa's apartment at midnight. Camera bag in one hand, overnight bag in the other. Tears she'd refused to cry earlier now streaming down her face. Melissa took one look at her and pulled her inside. I left him, Sarah sobbed into her best friend's shoulder. I mean, not permanently. I don't know. I just couldn't be in that apartment anymore. Okay. Okay. That's okay. Melissa guided her to the couch, wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, and made tea neither of them would drink. Tell me everything. And Sarah did. She told her about the missed dinners and forgotten conversations, the way Ethan's eyes glazed over when she talked about anything that wasn't related to his work, the growing sense that she was living with the ghost of the man she'd married. Do you still love him? Melissa asked gently. I love who he was. I love who we were. But now, I don't know if there's anything left to love. What about therapy? I suggested it 3 months ago. He said he didn't have time. Sarah laughed bitterly. He didn't have time to save our marriage. Her phone buzzed. Ethan's name lit up the screen. Ethan. Where are you? We need to talk. What are you going to do? Melissa asked. Sarah looked at the message, then at her camera bag, then at her best friend who'd seen her through everything. I'm going to figure out who I am without him, and then I'll decide if I want to be with him at all. She turned off her phone. The separation. The word separation tasted like ashes in Sarah's mouth, but she said it anyway, standing in the living room of their penthouse while Ethan sat rigid on the sofa they'd picked out together. A separation, he repeated, his voice hollow. Just temporary. A few weeks. I need space to think, to breathe, to remember who I am. You can do that here. No, I can't. Every corner of this place is about us, about who we were supposed to be. I need distance. Ethan ran his hands through his hair, a gesture she'd once found endearing and now just found exhausting. This is about the argument. It's about 100 arguments we never had because I swallowed my words. It's about 1,000 small deaths of the person I used to be. Sarah's voice was steady now, rehearsed from the speech she'd practiced at Melissa's. Ethan, when was the last time you asked me about my photography? He opened his mouth, then closed it. When was the last time we did anything together that wasn't a work function or an obligatory social event? Silence. When was the last time you chose me over your career? That's not fair, he said. But even he sounded uncertain. I'm doing this for us, building our future. What future? The one where you work 80 hours a week and I plan parties for people I don't care about? The one where we live in this beautiful cage and call it happiness? I thought you loved this apartment. I love you. The words exploded out of her. Or I did. Or I do. I don't even know anymore because you're never here, Ethan. You're physically here sometimes, but you, the real you, the man I married, he's been gone for so long I'm starting to forget what he looked like. Ethan stood up, and for a moment, she saw pain crack through his professional veneer. I'm right here. Are you? Because from where I'm standing, you left a long time ago. You just forgot to tell me. Sarah moved into a small studio apartment in Brooklyn that smelled like old books and possibility. It was a fraction of the size of the penthouse, with creaky floors and a radiator that clanged like a percussion orchestra, but it was hers. She spent the first week crying, the second week cleaning and unpacking. By the third week, she'd set up a darkroom in the bathroom and started photographing the city with fresh eyes. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages from Ethan. Ethan, can we talk? Ethan, I miss you. Ethan, I'm sorry for everything. Ethan, please come home. But Sarah wasn't ready. Not yet. Instead, she threw herself into photography. She woke up at dawn to catch the light on the Brooklyn Bridge, spent afternoons in ethnic neighborhoods capturing stories in faces and storefronts, stayed up late developing prints that reminded her why she'd fallen in love with art in the first place. Melissa visited often, bringing wine and wisdom. You look different, she said one evening, studying Sarah over a glass of Merlot. Different how? Alive. You look alive again. Sarah considered this, looking at the prints hanging to dry, an elderly man feeding pigeons, a child's laughter caught mid-burst, lovers holding hands in the rain. I forgot what it felt like, she admitted, to create something just because it makes me happy. Not for a client, not for a paycheck, just for me. You gave up a lot for Ethan. I gave up too much. And the worst part is, he never even asked me to. I just did it. I thought that's what love was, sacrifice. Love is sacrifice, Melissa said. But it should be mutual, not just one person diminishing themselves while the other expands. 4 weeks into the separation, Sarah's phone rang with an unknown number. Sarah Mitchell? The voice was professional female. Yes. My name is Patricia Chen. I'm a gallery owner in Soho. I was given your work by a friend who saw your photography exhibit at NYU. I'd like to discuss representing you. Sarah's heart stopped. I'm sorry, what? Your photographs are extraordinary. Raw, emotional, honest. I think we could do great things together. Would you be interested in meeting? Sarah looked around her tiny apartment, at the life she was rebuilding piece by piece. Yes, she said. Yes, I would. After she hung up, she sat on her secondhand couch and cried. But this time, the tears were different. This time, they were hope. Ethan's realization. Ethan Mitchell had always prided himself on his ability to compartmentalize. It was what made him an excellent lawyer, the capacity to separate emotion from logic, to focus on what mattered, to win. But as he sat alone in the penthouse on a Friday night, Sarah's absence echoing in every room, he realized he'd compartmentalized his marriage right into extinction. The apartment felt like a mausoleum. Sarah's coffee mug still sat by the sink, her favorite throw blanket draped over the back of the couch, her presence haunting the space even though she'd been gone for 5 weeks. 5 weeks. It felt like 5 years. Ethan poured himself a drink and sat in the darkness, letting himself feel everything he'd been avoiding. The loneliness, the regret, the crushing realization that he did everything that mattered and traded it for partnership at a law firm that would replace him the moment he stumbled. His phone rang. His mother. Ethan, sweetheart, how are you? He almost lied, the way he'd been lying to everyone. But something in his mother's voice, maybe the concern, maybe the familiarity, broke through his defenses. Mom, I think I ruined my marriage. The silence on the other end was heavy. Then, tell me everything. And he did. He told her about the late nights and missed dinners, the way work had consumed him like an addiction, how he'd stopped seeing Sarah as his wife and started seeing her as part of the background of his successful life. When your father was building his practice, his mother said quietly, he almost lost me too. Ethan sat up. What? You were just a baby. He was working 100-hour weeks, trying to establish himself. I felt invisible. One day, I packed a bag and went to stay with my sister. I never knew that, because your father woke up. He realized that all the success in the world meant nothing if he came home to an empty house. So he changed. He set boundaries, made time for us, remembered why he was working so hard in the first place. How did he fix it? He didn't fix it alone, Ethan. We fixed it together. But first, he had to prove he was willing to change. Not with words, with actions. After they hung up, Ethan sat in the dark for a long time, thinking about actions and consequences, about the man he'd become and the man he wanted to be. He looked at his laptop, at the stack of contracts that needed reviewing, at his phone buzzing with work emails. Then he did something he'd never done before. He turned it all off. The next morning, Ethan showed up at his senior partner's office with a decision that would have seemed insane 6 weeks ago. I need to cut back my hours, he said. James Harrison, a man who'd worked through his daughter's wedding and his own father's funeral, stared at him. You're kidding. I'm not. I need work-life balance. Reasonable hours. Time for my personal life. Ethan, you're on track for senior partner, and I'm on track for a divorce. The words came out stronger than he expected. I've been chasing this my whole career, and I finally have it. And you know what? It doesn't mean anything if I lose my wife in the process. James leaned back in his chair, studying him. Sarah left you. She needed space. Because I gave her no choice. Because I chose this. He gestured around the office. Over her. Every single day. This is a competitive field, Ethan. If you're not all in, then I'm not all in. I'm 50% in. The other 50% belongs to my marriage, if I still have one to save. James was quiet for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he smiled. My third wife divorced me because I couldn't make this speech. Good for you. So you'll approve it? I'll approve reasonable hours. 55 a week, not 80. But Ethan, this is your choice. You can't blame anyone else if it affects your trajectory here. I understand. And I don't care. Because what's the point of being senior partner if I'm alone? Ethan's next stop was the Brooklyn studio apartment. He stood outside the building, his heart hammering, holding flowers that suddenly seemed completely inadequate. Sarah answered the door in paint-stained jeans and an old college sweatshirt, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She looked more beautiful than he'd seen her in years. Ethan. She didn't open the door wider. What are you doing here? I need to talk to you. Please. She hesitated, then stepped aside. The apartment was tiny, cramped, nothing like their penthouse, but it was alive in a way their home hadn't been in months. Photographs covered the walls, her work, stunning and raw and honest. These are incredible, he said. Thank you. Her voice was guarded. Sarah, He struggled for words that felt too small for what he needed to say. I'm sorry. That doesn't begin to cover it, but I'm sorry. You were right about everything. I got lost in my career, in proving myself, in this idea of success that didn't include the most important thing, you. You can't just apologize and expect everything to be okay. I know. I don't expect that. I just want you to know that I'm changing. I talked to the partners. I'm cutting back my hours. I'm going to therapy. I already made the appointment. I'm going to do whatever it takes to be the man you married again. Sarah's eyes glistened with unshed tears. What if I don't want the man I married? What if I've changed too? The question knocked the breath from his lungs. What do you mean? I mean, I spent 5 years molding myself into what I thought you needed. The perfect wife for a successful lawyer. I gave up photography, took a job I hated, planned a life around your career, and I lost myself completely. I never asked you to do that. I know. That's the worst part. I did it willingly, thinking that's what love was. But Ethan, I found myself again. A gallery wants to represent me. I'm doing work I'm proud of. I'm happy, actually happy, for the first time in years. That's wonderful, he said, and meant it, even though it terrified him. I want you to be happy. Do you? Because if we try again, it can't be the same as before. I won't give this up. I won't make myself small to fit into your big life. I don't want you to. He took a step closer. I want you to be exactly who you are. I fell in love with an artist, Sarah, an incredible, passionate, talented woman who saw the world through a lens and made it beautiful. I don't know when I forgot that, but I did, and I'm so sorry. Tears spill down her cheeks now. I want to believe you. Then let me prove it. Not with words, with actions. Let me show you that I can change, that we can be different better. I'm scared, she whispered. Me too. He reached out, hesitantly, and when she didn't pull away, he took her hand. But I'm more scared of losing you completely. Sarah, you are the best thing that ever happened to me. You made me laugh. You made me think. You made me want to be better. And I threw that away for partnership at a law firm that doesn't care about me as a person. That was the stupidest thing I've ever done. Sarah looked at their joined hands, at his face, at the future hanging in the balance. I need time, she said finally. This isn't something we can fix with one conversation. I know, and I need you to understand, if we try again, things have to be different. Really different. Not just for a few weeks until you fall back into old patterns. They will be. I promise. Don't make promises you can't keep, Ethan. Then I'll prove it. Every single day. However long it takes. Rebuilding. The rebuilding was slow, tentative, like learning to walk after a devastating injury. Ethan started by showing up. Not grand gestures or expensive gifts, but presence. He came to Brooklyn on Tuesday evenings and they cooked dinner together. He attended her gallery meetings, offering support without trying to take over. He learned to listen without immediately trying to fix things. Sarah watched him carefully, waiting for the other shoe to drop, for old patterns to reassert themselves. But weeks passed, and Ethan kept showing up. He asked about my day, she told Melissa over coffee, and actually listened to the answer. For 20 minutes. Wow. Should we call the New York Times? Sarah laughed. I know it sounds ridiculous. No, honey, it sounds like progress. How do you feel about it? Scared, hopeful, confused, all of it at once. The truth was, Sarah was seeing glimpses of the man she'd fallen in love with. The Ethan who debated philosophy over breakfast and made terrible jokes and looked at her like she hung the moon. But she also saw the work it took him, the conscious effort to break old habits, to prioritize differently, to be present, and slowly, carefully, she let herself hope. 3 months into their reconciliation attempt, Ethan surprised her. Pack a bag for the weekend, he said. We're going somewhere. Where? It's a surprise. Sarah's first instinct was to refuse. Surprises required trust she wasn't sure she'd fully rebuilt. But something in Ethan's expression made her say yes. They drove north, into the Catskills, to a small cabin by a lake. It was the middle of autumn, and the trees were a riot of color against the impossibly blue sky. What is this place? Sarah asked as they pulled up to the rustic cabin. I rented it for the weekend. No internet, limited cell service, just us. I thought we could use the time to really talk. No distractions. Inside, the cabin was cozy and simple, wood-burning fireplace, comfortable furniture, windows overlooking the lake. On the table sat Sarah's favorite wine, fresh flowers, and a collection of photo books she'd mentioned wanting to read. You remembered, she said softly. I'm trying to remember everything, to pay attention to what matters. That night, they sat by the fire and talked until 3 a.m. They talked about the mistakes they'd both made, the resentments they'd harbored, the dreams they'd abandoned. They talked about what they wanted their future to look like, and whether they could build it together. I'm terrified of falling back into old patterns, Ethan admitted, staring into the flames. What if I mess this up again? Then we deal with it, Sarah said. But Ethan, I need you to understand, I won't sacrifice myself again. If it comes down to choosing between this marriage and my art, I'll choose my art. The old Ethan would have been hurt, defensive. The new Ethan, or maybe the real Ethan, the one she'd married, nodded slowly. Good, he said, because I don't want you to give it up. Your art is part of who you are. I fell in love with the whole you, Sarah. I don't want a partial version. What about your career? I'm learning that success doesn't have to mean destroying everything else in my life. I can be a good lawyer and a good husband. It's possible. I just have to want it badly enough. Do you? He turned to face her fully, the firelight dancing across his features. You're asking if I want this marriage? I'm asking if you're willing to fight for it. Every day. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard, he said. Sarah, losing you was the worst thing that ever happened to me. I don't ever want to feel that empty again. So yes, I'm willing to fight. For us. For the life we can build together. For the chance to be the man you deserve. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. I want to believe you so badly. Then believe me. And if I stumble, if I forget, call me on it. We're in this together, or we're not in it at all. She kissed him then, slow and sweet and full of possibility. And for the first time in months, she let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, they could make this work. The weekend in the cabin became a turning point. They returned to the city with a plan. Couples therapy every week, no excuses. Date nights every Friday, sacred and inviolable. Honest communication, even when it was uncomfortable. Dr. Patricia Reynolds, their therapist, didn't pull punches. You're here because your marriage almost failed, she said in their first session. That's not a small thing. The question is whether you both want to do the hard work to build something better. I do, Ethan said immediately. Sarah? Dr. Reynolds turned to her. Sarah took a breath. I want to, but I'm scared. What if we fall back into old patterns? What if this is just temporary? Change is always scary, Dr. Reynolds said. And the truth is, there are no guarantees. But from what you've both told me, your marriage is worth fighting for. The question is whether you're willing to be vulnerable enough to rebuild it. Over the following months, They worked through their issues layer by layer. Ethan confronted his workaholism, the way he'd used career success to avoid emotional intimacy. Sarah examined her tendency to disappear herself in relationships, to put others' needs before her own. It was exhausting and painful and sometimes felt impossible. But they kept showing up. The gallery opening. Sarah's first gallery show opened on a crisp November evening. The Soho Gallery was packed with art critics, collectors, and curious observers, all there to see her collection titled Lost and Found, 50 photographs documenting her journey through separation, rediscovery, and reconciliation. Sarah stood in the center of it all, terrified and exhilarated. "You're shaking," Melissa observed, handing her a glass of champagne. "There are people looking at my work, actually looking at it. What if they hate it? They won't hate it. Look at their faces." Sarah glanced around the gallery. People stood in front of her photographs with rapt attention, discussing composition and emotion, pointing out details she'd captured in moments of raw honesty. There was the series from early in her separation, dark, moody shots of the city at night, reflecting her loneliness. Then the Brooklyn photographs, bright and alive, documenting her rediscovery of joy. And finally, the reconciliation series, couples holding hands, families laughing, moments of connection that felt both universal and deeply personal. Sarah Mitchell, a distinguished older woman, approached her. "I'm Margaret Walsh from the Times. I'd love to interview you about this collection." "The New York Times?" Sarah's voice came out as a squeak. Margaret smiled. "Your work is extraordinary. It's raw and honest in a way that's rare. The way you've documented this journey of loss and finding yourself again, it resonates." As Margaret walked away to examine more photographs, Sarah felt a hand slip into hers. "I'm so proud of you," he murmured. "You came." She told him about the opening, but hadn't been sure he'd make it. Old wounds died hard. "Of course I came. I wouldn't miss this for anything." He gestured to the crowded gallery. "Look at what you've created, Sarah. This is incredible." "I couldn't have done it without the separation," she admitted. "Without losing everything and having to find myself again." "I know. And I'll always be sorry that I made you feel you had to lose yourself in the first place." She squeezed his hand. "We both made mistakes, but we're fixing them." Patricia Chen, the gallery owner, approached with a sophisticated couple in tow. "Sarah, I'd like you to meet the Harrisons. They're interested in purchasing the entire Brooklyn series." As Sarah discussed her work with potential buyers, Ethan stepped back, watching his wife come alive in a way he hadn't seen in years. She talked about composition and lighting and the stories behind each shot, her face animated, her hands gesturing expressively. This was the woman he married, the artist, the dreamer, the person who saw beauty where others saw ordinary. And he'd almost lost her because he'd been too blind to see what mattered. Never again, he promised himself. Never again. Later that night, after the gallery had closed and the crowds had dispersed, Sarah and Ethan walked through the empty space, her heels clicking on the polished floor. 7 pieces sold, Sarah said, still in disbelief. 7. Patricia thinks we might sell more in the coming weeks. You deserve every bit of success. Ethan stopped in front of one photograph in particular, a shot of 2 people holding hands across a table, their faces obscured, but their connection evident in the way their fingers intertwined. "Is this us?" Sarah nodded. "From the cabin. You were asleep, and I saw your hand reaching out in your sleep, like you were looking for me even when you were unconscious. I had to capture it. It's beautiful, like all of your work." He turned to face her. "Sarah, I have something I need to say." Her heart sped up. "Okay. These past 6 months have been the hardest and best of my life. Hard because I had to confront all the ways I'd failed us. Best because I got to fall in love with you all over again." "Ethan, let me finish, please." He took both her hands. "I know we're not where we were. We're somewhere different, somewhere better. And I don't want to go back to the penthouse, to that life we had before. I want us to build something new together." "What do you mean?" "I mean I want to sell the penthouse. Use the money to buy something we both love. Something that feels like ours, not just mine. I want to support your art career the way you've always supported mine. I want to be your partner in every sense of the word." Tears streamed down Sarah's face. "You'd sell the penthouse. You love that apartment. I love you more. The apartment was just a status symbol. You're my home, Sarah. You always have been." "I just forgot for a while." She kissed him then, there in the empty gallery surrounded by her art, her life, her truth. "I love you too," she whispered against his lips. "So much it terrifies me." "Then let's be terrified together." The choice. Not all the days were easy. 2 months after the gallery opening, Ethan came home late 3 nights in a row. Old anxieties resurfaced for Sarah. Was this the beginning of backsliding? Was he falling into old patterns? On the fourth night, she confronted him. You said you'd cut back your hours. I did. Ethan looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes. But there's a major case. There's always a major case. Sarah, that's not fair. I've been keeping my hours reasonable for months. But this is a wrongful termination suit. And the plaintiff is a single mother who got fired for taking time off when her daughter was hospitalized. I can't just abandon her case because it's inconvenient. Sarah paused, ashamed. I'm sorry. I jumped to conclusions. No, you have every right to be wary. I put you through hell. He sat on the couch, patting the space beside him. Talk to me. What's really going on? She sat, feeling vulnerable. I'm scared. Every time you work late, I panic that we're going back to how things were, that I'm losing you again. You're not losing me. But Sarah, I need you to trust me. Not blind trust. I know I have to earn that back. But trust that if I'm working extra hours, there's a legitimate reason. And trust that I'll tell you about it. Communicate with you, not shut you out. How do I do that when the fear is so loud? We talk about it, like we're doing now. You tell me you're scared. I reassure you and explain what's happening. We don't let resentment build up. They talked for hours that night about fear and trust, about the difference between healthy dedication to work and destructive obsession, about how to navigate rough patches without abandoning the progress they'd made. Relationships aren't linear, Sarah said. Dr. Reynolds told us that. Right. We're going to have setbacks. The key is how we handle them. Ethan pulled her close. I love you, and I'm committed to this marriage. On the hard days and the easy ones. Me too, Sarah whispered. Even when I'm scared. Especially when you're scared. That's when we lean in, not run away. The wrongful termination case consumed Ethan for 6 weeks. But this time, things were different. He came home for dinner, even if he worked afterward. He texted Sarah throughout the day. He included her in what he was working on, explaining the case over breakfast, asking her opinion. Why does it matter what I think? Sarah asked one morning. I'm not a lawyer. Because you see people clearly. You understand human nature in a way I don't. And because your perspective matters to me. When Ethan won the case, securing a substantial settlement for his client, Sarah was in the courtroom to watch. She photographed him afterwards, surrounded by a grateful family, and thought about how much had changed. This was success that meant something. Not just money or prestige, but actual impact on real lives. That night, they celebrated with Thai takeout and cheap wine in their new apartment, a Brooklyn brownstone they'd purchased together, with a spare bedroom converted into a dark room for Sarah and a small office for Ethan. To victories, Ethan said, raising his glass. To what matters, Sarah amended. They clinked glasses, and in that simple moment, Sarah felt something shift inside her. The constant vigilance, the waiting for him to disappoint her, it was easing. Not gone completely, maybe never fully gone, but quieter. Trust, she realized, wasn't a destination. It was a journey they were taking together, one day at a time. Full circle. 1 year after Sarah had walked out with her overnight bag, they sat in Dr. Reynolds' office for what they hoped would be their final therapy session. How are you both feeling about where you are? Dr. Reynolds asked. Sarah and Ethan exchanged glances. Good, Sarah said. Really good, actually. We had a rough patch last month. Ethan's mother was ill, and he was stressed, and I was dealing with gallery deadlines. We fought about stupid things, avoided each other for a few days. But we talked about it, Ethan continued. We used the tools we've learned here. We didn't let it fester. Dr. Reynolds smiled. That's growth. You're not going to stop having conflicts. You're human, and life is messy. The question is whether you have the skills to work through those conflicts constructively. Do you think we do? Sarah asked. I think you've both done remarkable work. You came in here a year ago barely able to communicate, and now you're navigating complex emotional terrain with honesty and respect. That's not easy. So we're done? Ethan asked. With therapy, you're done with weekly sessions. But I'd recommend checking in quarterly, at least for the next year. Think of it as relationship maintenance. After they left Dr. Reynolds' office, they walked through Central Park hand in hand, watching early spring transform the landscape. Can you believe it's been a year? Sarah said. Worst and best year of my life, Ethan replied. I wouldn't want to repeat the pain, but I wouldn't trade the growth either. Me neither. As awful as the separation was, I needed it to find myself again, to remember who I was beyond being your wife. And now? Now I'm me. And I'm your wife. Both things, not one or the other. They stopped by the pond where Ethan had proposed years ago, the memory bittersweet. We were so young, Sarah said. So sure we had it all figured out. And so wrong, Ethan laughed. We knew nothing. We knew we loved each other. That wasn't wrong. No. But I loved you in a selfish way. I wanted you to fit into my life, not build a life together. And I loved you in a disappearing way. I wanted to be whatever you needed, even if it meant losing myself. Ethan turned to face her, taking both her hands. I don't want either of those kinds of love anymore. What do you want? I want to love you in a way that makes us both bigger. That gives you space to be yourself and me space to be myself. And somehow we're even better together than apart. Sarah felt tears well up. That's the most romantic thing you've ever said to me. It's the truth. Sarah Mitchell, you make me want to be better. Not successful, not impressive, better. Kinder, more present, more real. You do the same for me. You challenge me, support me, believe in me even when I don't believe in myself. So what do you say? Should we renew our vows? Start fresh. Sarah considered this, then shook her head. No, I don't want to start fresh. I want to honor what we've been through, the good and the bad. It's all part of our story, our messy, complicated, beautiful story. Exactly. They kissed then, there by the pond where they'd started, not as the naive kids they'd been, but as the complex, flawed, committed adults they'd become. What we found. 2 years later, Sarah stood in a gallery in Paris, watching French art critics examine her latest collection. The show was titled Reconstruction, and it documented not just her journey, but Ethan's too, photographs of him in therapy, of them in couples counseling, of quiet moments of reconnection. It was her most vulnerable work yet, and it was garnering international acclaim. Ethan stood beside her, one hand on her lower back, a gesture of support and connection. Nervous? He murmured. Terrified. What if they think it's too personal? Then they're missing the point. Art is supposed to be personal. A French critic approached, speaking rapid French. Sarah's language skills were passable but not fluent, and she looked to Ethan, who'd been taking French lessons for the past year specifically so he could accompany her to international shows. He translated the glowing review, and Sarah felt tears of joy. Later, they walked along the Seine, their hands intertwined, talking about everything and nothing. I have news, Ethan said. News? I think so. The firm is opening a pro bono division, focusing on cases like the wrongful termination one. They want me to head it. That's amazing. But what about partnership track? I'm already a partner. And honestly, this feels more meaningful than climbing the corporate ladder ever did. Sarah stopped walking, turning to face him. You do that? Give up senior partnership? I'm not giving up anything. I'm choosing something better. A career that aligns with my values. More time for us. Work that actually matters. I'm so proud of you. I learned from the best, he said, pulling her close. You gave up a stable career to pursue your passion. You taught me that success isn't about prestige or money. It's about doing what makes you feel alive. They stood on a bridge overlooking the river, two people who'd almost lost everything and found something better in the wreckage. Do you remember when you said you wanted to look at what I lost? Sarah asked softly. Every day. It's what motivated me to change. But the thing is, I don't think either of us lost anything. We shed what wasn't working. We lost the illusion of a perfect marriage and found a real one instead. A messy, complicated, imperfect, real one. The best kind, Sarah agreed. As the sun set over Paris, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, they stood together, not as two people who'd salvaged a broken marriage, but as two people who'd built something new from the fragments. They'd looked at what they'd lost and found something better. They'd found themselves. And in finding themselves, they'd found each other all over again. And